You mention on page 9 and page 18 other factors that may affect decision making. I'm wondering if you could briefly comment on those. One of them was staff turnover and driving long distances.
In the Margaret River fires that were largely handled by the Department of Environment and Conservation, the way the department is established in the southwest of Western Australia is based more on historical responsibilities, particularly the forest to the east of some of the centres, because there are large forest areas in that area, between Margaret River and Esperance, for example, and between Margaret River and really towards the Board area or towards the wheat belt. So a lot of the historical placement of staff and resources has an impact on how they do prescribed burns, because people had to drive out long distances to start a burn, and then the decision has to be made whether they leave resources there or whether they all come back. If they leave resources there, you've got to have accommodation, you've got to make sure people are properly clothed and fed. If you come back, you leave the prescribed burn unattended. So what was happening is, in my view, was that as the Margaret River region was being settled and population movements were starting to move down into that area, what they call a combination of the tree change and sea change, as that was happening, I guess what wasn't happening was a consideration of the placement of resources. Getting back to some of the earlier points of your question, people driving long distances becomes commonplace, and everybody gets used to it, particularly in a state like Western Australia, and I imagine in parts of Queensland, in the Northern Territory, even in parts of New South Wales. People who drive really long distances and become used to it don't necessarily pick up on the impact that has to decision making, because decision making, particularly when you're looking at it through the prism of an inquiry and the benefit of hindsight, where I come into a room and say, well, my witness today, tell me what the decisions were that you made, and I'm looking at them and I'm saying, well, hang on, why would you make those decisions? I'm fresh, I've read the brief, I'm in the comfort of an office doing the hearing. The person making decisions on the ground isn't necessarily in the same state of mind. They've driven long distances, they've worked long hours. If you've got a number of prescribed burns happening at the same time, typically you're driving long distances between those prescribed burns if you're in a management position. And so that has impact on your level of alertness, and tiredness does affect decision making. We say all the time in road safety, if you're tired or if you're yawning, stop. And yet we don't say it, if you're tired and you're yawning, don't make critical decisions in an emergency, because it may not be the right decision.